You're born on August 5th, 1930, in Wapakoneta, Ohio. A small town with flat roads, open sky, and not much reason to look up, unless you're you. When you were 6, your father takes you to the Cleveland air races. While other kids cover their ears from the deafening roar of planes diving low over the runway, you are completely still, staring upward with a focus almost unnatural for a child. As if you're already trying to reverse engineer the sky. You don't just like airplanes, you study them. By the time you turn 15 years old, something remarkable happens. You earn a student pilot certificate. This means you are officially allowed to begin learning how to fly airplanes. There is something very unusual about this. You are still too young to drive a car. Most teenagers your age are just beginning to learn how to park between 2 lines at the grocery store parking lot. You, on the other hand, are learning something much more complicated. You are learning how to guide an airplane through the sky. You practice takeoffs where the airplane slowly gains speed until the wheels lift off the ground. You practice turns, carefully tilting the wings while keeping the aircraft steady. You practice landings, which might be the hardest part of flying, because the airplane must return safely to the runway without bouncing or drifting off course. Flying is not just exciting, it requires focus, patience, and careful thinking. And you discover something important. You enjoy that challenge. After high school, you decide to study something that will help you understand flight even better. You attend Purdue University and study aeronautical engineering. This field of study is all about understanding how aircraft fly. You learn about lift, which is the force that pushes an airplane upward into the sky. You learn about gravity, which constantly pulls everything back toward Earth. You learn about engines, wings, air pressure, and the complicated science that allows heavy machines made of metal to stay in the air. At first, airplanes feel like magic. But the more you study, the more you realize that flying is not magic at all. It is science. Very complicated science. And understanding that science makes flying even more fascinating. While you are studying at Purdue, the world outside the classroom suddenly changes. The Korean War begins. The United States Navy needs pilots, and you answer the call. You become a naval aviator and begin flying a jet fighter called the Grumman F-9F Panther. Flying a jet fighter is very different from flying the training aircraft you learned on. Jet fighters are faster, louder, and far more powerful. And during war, the skies are not peaceful. Enemy guns fire into the air. Danger can appear at any moment. One day during a mission, something extremely dangerous happens. Your aircraft is flying low over a valley when suddenly a cable stretched across the valley slices into the wing of your jet. The impact is violent. The airplane shakes hard, and alarms begin to warn that something is very wrong. Part of the wing has been torn away. A damaged aircraft can easily spin out of control, and if that happens at high speed, there may be no way to recover. But you do not panic. You focus on the controls. You guide the damaged aircraft toward friendly territory, holding it steady long enough to reach a safer area. Finally, when the situation becomes impossible to control any longer, you eject safely from the aircraft and parachute to the ground. It is a close call. Moments like this teach you an important lesson. A great pilot is not someone who never faces danger. A great pilot is someone who stays calm when danger appears. After the war, you return to your studies and complete your degree. But you are not finished flying. In fact, your flying career is about to become even more unusual. You become a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Test pilots fly experimental aircraft that are still being developed. These planes are pushed to the very limits of speed, altitude, and control. Sometimes they fly faster than any aircraft has flown before. Sometimes they climb higher than pilots have ever gone. One of the most incredible aircraft you fly is the X-15 rocket plane. The X-15 is not a normal airplane. It is part airplane and part rocket. When its powerful rocket engine ignites, the aircraft shoots upward at incredible speed. Higher and higher it climbs. The sky begins to change color. The bright blue slowly fades into a darker shade, then it becomes deep purple, and finally the sky above looks almost black. At these heights, you are flying near the edge of space. Below you, the curve of the Earth becomes visible. Above you, the darkness of space stretches endlessly. Flying the X-15 teaches you how to control aircraft in conditions that very few pilots have ever experienced. And these skills will soon become extremely important. Because in 1962, something extraordinary happens. NASA selects you as one of its new astronauts. The world is now in the middle of the space race. The United States and the Soviet Union are both racing to explore space. Scientists, engineers, and pilots are working together to solve a problem that humanity has never faced before. How do you send humans safely beyond Earth? Your calm personality and careful thinking make you a perfect choice for the astronaut program. Your first space mission takes place in 1966. You launch into space aboard Gemini 8 with astronaut David Scott. The mission has an important goal. For For the first time in history, two spacecraft must dock together in orbit around Earth. Docking means the spacecraft must slowly approach each other and connect perfectly while both are moving thousands of miles per hour. It is like trying to carefully connect two moving cars while driving on a highway, except these cars are floating in space. At first, everything goes perfectly. The spacecraft successfully docks. It is a historic moment, but only minutes later, something terrifying begins to happen. The spacecraft starts to spin. At first, the movement is slow, but the spinning quickly becomes faster and faster. Soon, the spacecraft is spinning so rapidly that it becomes difficult to read the instruments. If the spinning continues, you and your partner could lose consciousness, and if that happens, the spacecraft might never recover control. But you begin carefully checking every system. Within seconds, you identify the problem. A thruster used for steering has become stuck. It keeps firing non-stop, pushing the spacecraft into the dangerous spin. You immediately shut down the faulty system and activate another set of control thrusters designed for re-entry. Slowly, the spinning begins to slow. Then it stops completely. The mission must end early because the emergency system has been used. But both astronauts return safely to Earth. Your ability to stay calm under pressure has just saved the mission. And it has also proven something important. You are exactly the kind of pilot NASA needs. 3 years later, you are chosen to command a mission that will become one of the most famous events in human history. Apollo 11. On July 16, 1969, the Saturn V rocket launches from Kennedy Space Center. It is the most powerful rocket ever built. The engines produce more than 7.6 million pounds of thrust. The ground shakes as the rocket rises slowly into the sky. Inside the spacecraft are 3 astronauts, you, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. Your mission is something humans have dreamed about for centuries. You are going to the moon. The journey takes 3 days. During that time, the Earth slowly becomes smaller behind you. Ahead of you, the moon grows larger. Eventually, your spacecraft enters orbit around the moon. From the windows, the lunar surface looks gray, dusty, and filled with craters. Soon it is time for the most dangerous part of the mission. You and Buzz Aldrin move into the lunar module. This small spacecraft is called Eagle. Its job is to carry the two of you from lunar orbit down to the surface of the moon. Michael Collins remains in orbit above, piloting the command module. The descent toward the moon begins. At first, the landing computer guides the spacecraft automatically, but suddenly warning alarms appear. The computer is becoming overloaded. Mission Control quickly studies the data. After a tense moment, they send a message. Continue. The descent continues. But as you look out the window, you notice something alarming. The computer is guiding the spacecraft toward a crater filled with large boulders. Landing there would be extremely dangerous, so you take manual control. You carefully guide the spacecraft forward, searching for a safer landing site. Meanwhile, the fuel supply is running low. Mission Control watches the numbers. Less than 30 seconds of fuel remains. The spacecraft continues descending. Dust begins to rise from the surface below, and then suddenly a small light inside the spacecraft turns on. You shut down the engine. For a moment, everything is silent. Then you speak the words that millions of people on Earth are waiting to hear.
Houston, Tranquility Based here. The Eagle has landed.
Humans are now standing on the moon. Hours later, it is time to open the hatch. You climb down the ladder attached to the lunar module. Below you is the surface of the moon, a place where no human being has ever stood before. You step down, and your boot presses into the fine gray dust. You say the words that will be remembered forever. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. For the next 2.5 hours, you and Buzz Aldrin explore the lunar surface. You collect rock samples, you take photographs, you place scientific instruments that will send information back to Earth. Walking on the moon feels strange because gravity is much weaker than on Earth. Each step becomes a slow, bouncing motion. Instead of walking normally, astronauts move with gentle hops across the dusty ground. Above you, the black sky stretches endlessly. And far away in the distance, a blue and white planet floats silently. Earth, your home. Eventually, the time comes to leave. The lunar module lifts off from the surface and returns to orbit where Michael Collins is waiting. Together, the 3 of you begin the journey back to Earth. When you finally return home, the entire world celebrates the mission. But your life does not remain focused on fame. In 1971, you leave NASA. You become a professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Cincinnati. You teach students about aircraft, spacecraft, and the science of flight. And sometimes, when people look at the moon in the night sky, they remember something remarkable. Once, a curious kid from a small town looked up at the sky and wondered what was possible. That curiosity carried you farther than almost anyone in history. From small airplanes, to powerful jet fighters, to experimental rocket planes, and finally, to the surface of the moon. And it all began with something very simple. A child looking up at the sky and asking a question. What is out there? And one day, you found the answer.